Hey, okay, I know it's the top of the hour, but I'm going to get started because no one really wants to hear me. Well, they do, but I mean, I'm not the center of attention here. So welcome everyone to the October 13th meeting of the British Empire Study Group. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are people. I removed men and women because someone said that wasn't what I should say. So we are people who are interested in the British Empire and its related philately. We both enjoy the social, the technical parts of philately, and just learning and sharing. So we're a pretty easy group. We meet online and ad hoc. If you see someone at a show, we'll do that. So we have a very liberal definition of the British Empire. If it flew over it, if it ran through it, if it came through it, it all counts. So you'll find we're not really strict on that definition. Some groups are, but we're not one of them. Okay, our next meeting will be on Thursday, November 10th, and that will be with Gary Powers Jr. And that's letters from a Soviet prison. These are letters that his father wrote while he was in prison in Russia. That was the subject of British spies. For those of you who need a little history refresher, which probably isn't you, it's more me and my son. So a little housekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the question and answer button at the bottom of the talk. Rob will talk about we'll address those at the end of the talk with Mike as I bring you over. If you have any comments or need clarification, feel free to use the chat. It's open for everyone. You could do private discussions. If you don't like the chat, because some people get really annoyed with the pop-ups, you could go ahead and hit the little hat next to the chat and just turn off the display, and it will just put a little number like that. So it will not disturb you during the presentation. If you want to disable the closed captions, because we do have closed captions here for anyone who needs them or who'd like to use them. It's my husband's birthday. He's deaf, so we always turn them. He's not really deaf, but he's hard of hearing. So he loves the captions, so we always keep them on. You don't like them, you could turn them off by hitting the live transcript button and just turn off those subtitles. Okay, so some people have commented that they don't like where the presenter sits, and no offense to Mike, because this is Mike actually on the screen when I did the shot, but you could just click in the black area and drag it to wherever you want, and you could change it from a multiple view to a single view. But but anyway, I saw the start webinar and I got a little concerned. Anyway, you could just drag it and format it the way you want. So at the end of this, there's going to be a survey. So this should take you, if I did it correctly, right to a survey. There's also one in the reminder email that was sent out, and there's one on our website. Just complete it only once, please, if you could. It will really help us with our demographics and setting up some future shows. So after the presentation, we'll have the social hour, which will bring you all over from the viewer only into presenters. So you'll be able to see and talk to Mike and everyone here. Turn on your screen. I'll remind you when we get closer, and NoJect starts tomorrow. Okay, and I just wanted to thank all of you for joining us. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Rob, and who helps me a lot in this, and you'll hear from him as he introduced Mike, and to Andreas, who was kind enough to help me with some getting the word out for this promotion. So without further ado, I am going to stop sharing and turn it over to Rob to introduce tonight's presenter.
Thank you, Joan. Welcome to our program this evening. I'd like to share a little background on tonight's topic. On January 20th, 1936, King George V died, and the stamps of his reign were gradually being replaced throughout the Commonwealth by those of his successor, King George VI. On April 1st, 1937, Burma became a separately administered colony of Great Britain. Prior to that time, it was treated as a province of the Indian Empire. Now, this new status would bring with it a requirement for dedicated stamps and currency of its own to differentiate itself from its former status as an Indian province. To accommodate this requirement in such short notice, it was decided to continue using the King George V stamps of India, but overprinted with the country name Burma to clearly display their newfound independence, excuse me, and separation from India, where they were a former province. Late 1938 saw the introduction of the first set of dedicated Burmese stamps with the issuance of the King George VI definitives. This evening, our presenter, Mike Lay, will share with us many of the varieties and uses of these father and son definitives in great detail. Here's some background on Mike Lay, our presenter this evening. Mike's retired and lives in Doniphan, Nebraska. He's been collecting and exhibiting Burma stamps for the past 30 years, winning 6 multi-frame and 2 single-frame grand awards for Burmese subjects. He's currently the director of the Burma Myanmar Philatelic Study Circle in the UK, and he's finishing up a second term as president of the American Association of Philatelic Exhibitors. Prior to that, he served as their secretary for 8 years. He was awarded with their Herdenberg Award at the Great American Stamp Show for exceptional service to the organization. It should be mentioned that it's unusual to receive this award while still in office. So without further ado, I give you our presenter this evening, Mike Lay.
Okay. Okay. Well, the British conquest. Oh, I gotta get rid of Joan here. Okay, the British conquest of Burma was completed in 1886. It was made a part of India, even though the people shared no ethnic or cultural heritage. Here's Burma. There's mountain range between Burma and India. Thailand's over here. China's up here. Tibet and the Himalayas are here. India began pushing for independence in the 1920s. 3 India Roundtable conferences were held in London from 1930 to 32. Burma wanted independence and not to be a part of India. There was a special Burma Roundtable conference in London from November 1931 through January of 32. This is a certificate of mailing from the conference. The postmark reads Burma Roundtable Conference, 2 December 31. In 1935, the British decided that Burma would become a separate colony on April 1st, 1937. It was not independence, but at least Burma would not be part of India. George V died on January 20th, 1936, 20 months before Burma would become a separate colony. Work began on Edward VIII stamps they would need. This unique essay card for Edward VIII stamps was signed by Thomas Archer, chief artist engraver at Security Printing India in Nasik, India. When Edward VIII abdicated on December 8, 1936, it was less than 4 months before stamps would be needed. On the day of the abdication, Burma cabled London. Decision for stamps postponed until April 1937. Meanwhile, India's stamps overprinted will be used. The separation took place as scheduled on April 1st. 15 denominations of India stamps overprinted Burma were issued on this date as a provisional issue. Shown are used examples of the entire issue as 3 values were released later. 12 pies equals 1 anna, 16 pies equals 1 rupee. All stamps were on watermarked paper. 17 of the 18 denominations have now been found with inverted watermarks. Only the 1 rupee is not. Some are common and some are rare and priced with a dash in Gibbons. The most recent listing is based on the 2020 discovery of this 2 anna stamp with an inverted watermark. The rupees high value stamps were printed in sheets of 160. 2 cross gutter blocks can be found on each sheet. There was little need for the rupees high values. These 3 were not overprinted until 22 days after separation. The 15 rupees is found with the watermark inverted, even though the basic stamp of India can be found either way. And the 25 rupees is not known in any multiple larger than 4. Some high values were used in 1937, but no high values on cover are recorded surviving until 1940 during the war. I will show some of them later in the presentation. The overprinted stamps were distributed to post offices early, but not supposed to be used before April 1st. This cover shows a March 22nd use, which should not have been accepted, but was. Gibbons does mention this early use. Domestic rates and rates to India were based on the tola, which equals 0.411 ounces or 11.7 grams. Beginning April 1st, stamps of India were no longer valid in Burma. This shows a June 10th attempted use. The stamp was circled and the cover was marked postage due. Here is a sample packet tagged to India. The rate was 1.5 annas for the first 4 ounces. Foreign or domestic, didn't matter. Here is a printed matter cover to Cyprus. The rate was 9 pies for the first 2 ounces, domestic or foreign, empire or UPU. This is a pack boat cover to Singapore, posted on the SS Hai Li, en route to Penang. The empire rate was 2.5 annas for the first ounce. The postcard rate, empire or UPU, was 2 annas, and Hungary was not a common destination. The UPU letter rate was 3.5 annas for the first ounce. The fee for registration was 3 anna for all mail, domestic or foreign. Tanganyika, part of the empire, is a good destination, and Macau, a UPU point, also a nice destination. In 1937, all airmail departed Burma on Imperial Airways. Here's Rangoon. They flew as far as Sydney going east. Going west, the route was to Alexandria, where it split going either to Cape Town or back to England. This cover to England crashed at takeoff at Brindisi, Italy, one of the regular stops. 2 were killed, but most mail was salvaged and delivered. Here's a damaged by sea water hand stamp. Airmail to England was 7.5 annas inclusive for the first ounce. You'll see some air rates in this period consisted of postage per ounce plus air fees per half ounce. This is a 3.5 ounce registered air cover to Cape Town. Here is a 6 ounce airmail letter to Australia. It left Rangoon July 14th, 1937, and arrived in Sydney on July 20th. It is considered the highest pre-war franking from Burma to Australia. Imperial Airways operated a weekly shuttle between Penang and Hong Kong to connect with the Marion Imperial Airways route. In December 1937, the service became Bangkok to Hong Kong. In Europe, Imperial Airways stopped at Athens, Brindisi, Rome, and Marseille on the way to England. The air fee to any of these stops was 6 annas per half ounce plus postage. This example was offloaded at Marseille and went by rail to Portugal. For 2 more annas per half ounce, mail could be offloaded at Athens and then fly on the DLH Greece, Germany route, which was Athens, Belgrade, Budapest, Vienna, Prague, and Berlin. This cover flew on that route to Berlin, where the air label was barred out, and it went surface beyond to Sweden. There was no transatlantic air service. The 6 ANA air feed to Europe applied on US mail. Most was offloaded at Southampton, but this cover endorsed Burma. France would have gone as far as Marseille, and then railed to Cherbourg to cross the ocean. The air label was defaced when the air leg was complete. For 4 more ANAs, air mail service could be provided once it reached the United States. And the air label was not defaced, as on this cover to Los Angeles. Well, that expensive all-air service to the US became available. Imperial to Hong Kong via Bangkok, Pan Am Trans-Pacific to San Francisco. This cover took 20 days, Rangoon to San Francisco. Flights were not daily, more often weekly. KLM was a faster, more expensive, but unadvertised alternative to Imperial Airways. They had flown out of Rangoon since 1928, but was not allowed to carry Burma mails until December 3rd, 1937. It was finally permitted after complaints were received from firms who wished to use the 2 days faster service. This cover was marked postage due, as apparently it had only enough postage to fly on Imperial. Then the additional postage was noticed on the back and the postage due was crossed out. 12 denominations were also overprinted service for use on official mail and also issued on April 1. The 5 and 10 rupees overprinted service were overprinted service May 5th, 34 days after separation. The 3, 3.5 ANAs and the 15 and 25 rupees were never overprinted service, which partly seems strange because 3 ANAs was the registration rate and 3.5 ANAs was the UPU rate. Only 8 of the 14 service values have been reported with inverted watermarks. These are the most recent discoveries. Certificates were obtained in 2019 and Gibbons listed them in 2020. Here's a domestic mail income tax summons. Here's official mail to Nepal. Nepal was not part of India nor part of the empire, but had a special relationship with both. This cover was backstamped in Nepal and appears to have moved at the empire rate. This cover was backstamped at Roxal and Jugbani, which are Indian towns on the border. Seems to have moved at the UPU rate. This is a registered 4-ounce airmail cover to Singapore. Here are the 2 highest official values used. There are no reported surviving uses on cover. If you have one, let me know. While the Burma George V provisional uses were being used, work had begun on Burma George VI stamps. These are the first essays. George VI stamps for both India and Burma were to be printed at Nasik, India. Here's the official George VI photograph and a composite photograph with crown and robe sent to him for his approval on January 15th of 1937. The robes he is wearing, with the robes he's wearing the Order of the Star of India and the Order of the Indian Empire. India issued their first George VI stamp in August 1937. 7 cards of proposed designs for Burma were sent to London February 14th, 1938. The portrait was the same as the head used on the Indian stamp. The head and frame on this card were both rejected. The cards were returned March 19th, 1938. This frame was accepted for the ANA values. The frames on this card were accepted for the 1 and 2 rupees. The portrait here, though, was circled and rejected. Here is a January 1st, 1938 interoffice memo from Sir Desmond Morris, Master, SPI, to Thomas Archer that showed that the work had already begun on a new head, even before the proposed designs were sent to London on January 14th. Competitive designs and the new George VI head are mentioned in Archer's notes, also mentions new perforation boxes. Well, one perceived problem with that head was the ear shading. This photo essay shows a revised shading of the ear, but the same Indian orders on the robe. India first used this new head on June 1st, 1939. The message sent with the cards in 38 acknowledged the problem with using the head on Burma stamps with him wearing Indian orders. This essay has the ear shading fixed and now has the king wearing the Order of the Garter. This order had nothing to do with Burma, but at least Burma could no longer object to Indian orders. The final designs seeking the king's approval were sent January 1st and received in London, July 19th. All problems with the head had been fixed. The pictorials here were the result of a design competition, were the first stamps of this size ever done at Nasik. New perforating box mentioned the previous interoffice memo had to be ordered. The king gave his final approval on January 30th, 1938. The king approves. The new George VI Burma stamps were issued on November 15th, 1938. This is over 20 months after separation from India and almost 16 months after India issued their first George VI stamps. The stamps are on elephant's head watermark paper. The 3 Anna is the only one recorded with an inverted watermark. This was discovered and certified in 2019, and Gibbons listed in 2020 with no pricing information. Some plate varieties are listed. These extra trees were first listed in 1992. This tick bird was first listed in 2011. After the war, stamps were overprinted for the military administration. Some overprinted stamps were pre-war stamps, and these varieties can be found. Most overprints were on stamps that were printed later, and the varieties no longer existed. The medallion flaw and the 6 pies and the extra birds and the clouds were first listed in 2011. These flaws were never fixed and exist on the 45 overprinted issue, the 46 change of color issue, and the 47 interim government overprinted issue. Duplicate examples of some varieties have been reported, as these examples show. They've never been plated. It's assumed they existed for a short time and were fixed. And there's others like this I could show you. This stamp is an example overprinted in Lisbon onto UPU specimens supplied for Portuguese colonies. The 4 blocks overprinted canceled were first reported in 1999. No more have been reported since. The purpose may have been to provide specimens of work to potential customers. May 6, 1940 was the centenary of the postage stamp. Burma overprinted and revalued some 2.5 Anna stamps for the occasion. This arrow points to a broken bar that is a constant variety. This strip is from the Mauritania Specimen Archive. This illustration makes the overprint readable. It was obtained using retro reveal, which seems no longer to be available. On August 1st, 1940, a 1 pie stamp was added to the George VI issue. It was needed to pay the new 1 pi rate for up to 5 tolas on internal newspapers, the cheapest newspaper rate in the world. This wrapper is the only surviving wrapper known to me that carried a newspaper. First day wrappers that never carried a newspaper do exist. The 1938 George VI issue was produced by lithography. The economical plates wore out quickly. For more durable plates, the workhorse 1 Anna was changed to typography in 1941. The litho has a thinner outer frame line. The typo has a Jubilee line in the sheet margin. Gibbons, as early as 1975, acknowledged the existence of the typo version, but gave it no catalog number. I believe in the last year or so, they've assigned it 22A. They now want to list an EKU date, and they've informed me they will use August 24th, 1941, based on this cover. The domestic rate was 1 Anna per tola. Express mail was available for another 2 Annas. Mail was transmitted like ordinary mail to the destination post office and then given to the nearest government telegraph office for immediate delivery like a telegram. Airmail was available with an additional 1 Anna per tola air fee. There was no real internal airmail service, but it was available between Akiab and Rangoon using Imperial Airways, which stopped at both places. On June 12, 1939, the Imperial Airways Centurion was caught in a severe gust of wind when coming into land on the Hooghly River near Calcutta. The plane crashed, but the passengers and crew were rescued. Most of the mail was water damaged, but recovered. This still delivered the next day. The covers I have seen that went on to the UK have a water damaged cachet added. This is a nice Holstein Tiger beer advertising cover. It had enough postage for the UK, but not enough for the US, so it was marked postage due. This is a commercial first day cover for George V's 2 rupee stamp. It was desirable to me because of the sample post to Thailand. Fortunately, the seller did not realize the significance of the November 15th date. This cover was sent to Mexico. I've collected Burma at least 30 years, and this is the first one in Mexico I've ever found. Burma joined the Empire All-Up airmail scheme on February 23rd of 1938, which is airmail service to most of the empire for only 2.5 annas per half ounce. This cover to Kenya is an all-up cover and another commercial first day cover. This is a registered all-up 8-ounce bag of cotton tea cloth in England. Service overprints were applied to some stamps of all denominations except the 3 and 3.5 annas. They were not released until April 1, 1939, 4.5 months after the regular stamps were issued. Here are the rupee value officials. The 5 rupee block of 40 and the 10 rupees block of 24, the largest multiples of these denominations I have ever seen. They were both in an original official storage book of post office stock in Burma. During the 42 Japanese invasion, the book managed to stay out of Japanese hands. It made its way to England soon after the war. This is a 1939 official cover. As noted 2 slides back, that George VI with service overprint were issued in 39, over 4 months after the regular stamps. They are not often found used in 1939. It appears there were still ample stocks of George V official stamps to be used up. And here are used examples of the 5 and 10 rupees service stamps. Neither have been reported surviving used on cover. I've published my census work in the Burma Fantail, with help from James Song of Singapore. Rarely am I informed of something to add. Now we get to World War II. When the war started, Burma's population was 16 million, comparable to Egypt and certainly more than Canada and Australia. Only India and Nigeria were larger British areas. Burma was important in supplying China to keep them in the war and keep the Japanese busy. The British also wanted Burma to be a buffer protecting India from the Japanese. This map may help with this section. Rangoon was the biggest city, the largest, busiest airport. Akyab over here had a port and an airport. The Japanese invasion, which actually started in December of 41, started down here from Thailand. Mandalay is the second largest city in the country. Lashio was where the famous Burma Road supplying China began. Later, it had direct air service over to Calcutta. Palam here is in the Chin Hills, where the last Burma stamps were used. This cover, dated September 3rd, 1939, was mailed the day Britain declared war on Germany and the day censorship was introduced on mail leaving the country. The goal was to censor 10% of Empire mail. There was no more all-up mail, and 2.5 annas only paid for surface mail now. The Akyab censor mark on this cover to England is one of two known. Some censor marks were green on this cover to Egypt. The goal was to censor 100% of non-Empire mail. You can notice the red censor mark on this cover to Algeria. This cover to China shows a very rare censor mark from Mandalay that's one of two recorded. On at least 2 occasions, mail from Burma to the British Isles was intercepted by the Germans. This was censored in Berlin, and after much delay, sent to Lisbon, where it was turned over to the British. It was then censored in London before final delivery. This cover was over 20 months in transit. The all-up airmail no longer existed, but Empire airmail was available at 14 annas per half ounce. This cover to Hong Kong was sent by the Central Aircraft Manufacturing Company, which oversaw assembling planes and recruiting pilots with Flying Tigers to aid the Chinese in their fight against the Japanese. This double weight cover to Canada shows an attempt to bar out the air label. It went surface beyond England to Canada. I told you earlier there were no high values uses on cover known until the war. Here's one that pays 27 times the airmail rate to London and shows the earliest known use of the George V 15 rupee stamp. The air surcharge to Europe tripled and applied to mail flown by air to England and then carried by steamer to New York. The 4 annas air fee beyond New York did not change. You can see the air label was not barred out. This received air all the way to Iowa. By February 8th, 1940, an all-air route became available. Imperial to Marseille, Air France to Lisbon, Pan Am to New York. 2.5 rupees per half ounce plus postage. The endorsement, Burma, USA via France, was required. The service ended with the fall of France in June of 42. Italy entered the war June 10th, 1940. The Mediterranean was closed to Imperial. This cover was in transit to England when Italy entered the war. It left Rangoon on June 10th, arrived in Karachi on June 11th, where the flight was terminated because of the Mediterranean. Mail was offloaded on June 12th, taken to Bombay and sent by ship to UK. A new route had already been planned. Mail was to be flown as far as Durban in South Africa, would then go by rail to Cape Town, and sea up the West African coast to get to England. The route began operation on June 19th. The Empire rate changed from 14 annas a half ounce to 1 rupee per half ounce for the horseshoe route. Here is a 10 times rate cover to London for up to 5 ounces. This had 85 rupees for 42 and a half ounces to London. This is the earliest recorded of the 7 George V 25 rupees commercial covers. It's one of 2 recorded with a pair of them in the franking. And it's the larger, has the larger total franking. For good measure, it's also the earliest recorded use of the 5 George VI 10 rupees commercial covers, and one of 3 with 2 of them in the franking. The United States via Durban. Quoting from the postcard above left, we have a new airmail route to the USA. Airmail as far as Durban in South Africa, and then by land and sea. The inclusive postcard rate was 8 annas. A 3 annas stamp had fallen off. This cover right says air via Durban overseas to USA. There were 2 routes to China, BOAC, which had absorbed the Imperial by now, to Bangkok, connecting with their shuttle to Hong Kong across Indochina. On October 31st, 1930, a weekly service was introduced. Rangoon to Hong Kong. Rangoon to Hong Kong via Lashio, Kunming, and Chongqing via China National Air Corporation, or CNAC. Initially, it was mostly from Burma for airmail to central and western China. Here is a June 1940 Trans-Pacific cover to the US. It went via Bangkok and the feeder service across Indochina. By October 9th, normal rate was 4 rupees 5 3/4 annas inclusive for the first ounce. By October 1940, the Japanese were causing problems for BOAC planes flying across Indochina. Indochina was, after the fall of France, Indochina was Vichy French colony. Allied with the Axis power, CNAC was a way to get around Indochina, but was more expensive. The rate for CNAC mail for Trans-Pacific service to the US via China was 5 rupees 13 annas per half ounce, more than 1 rupee higher than the rate via BOAC. This October 30th cover was a 3 ounce registered letter, and the total needed was 35 rupees 1 anna. The 3 George V 10 rupee stamps used are the earliest known use of this stamp, and one of 2 known covers with 3 of them in the franking. The BOAC problems flying to Hong Kong presented CNAC the opportunity to become the main airline for Burma to all of China. The CNAC rate to China was lowered to 13 annas per half ounce in November of 1940, which enabled the Trans-Pacific rate via CNAC to be lowered to 4 rupees 5 annas. This became the route of choice from Burma for this mail. Here is a 2.5 ounce cover paying the 21 rupees 9 annas required with a 15 rupees stamp in the franking. Air to Hong Kong and surface beyond was available. The rate to the feet of the US was 1 rupee 1.5 annas inclusive per half ounce. The fee for service to Empire points was only 1 rupee per half ounce, the same as for the horseshoe route. This covers a double weight cover paid with a 2 rupee stamp. The 2 ocean route to the UK was CNAC to Hong Kong, Pan Am to Lisbon, and BOAC to England. This cover shows 5 rupees, 14 annas inclusive rate per a half ounce. On July 22nd, 1941, the rate to China was again reduced, this time to 7.5 annas per half ounce plus postage. This letter was to Ralph Ingersoll at the American Embassy in Chongqing. He was no longer there, and it was eventually returned to sender. On the same day the rate to China was lowered, the trans-Pacific rate to the US was lowered to 3 rupees, 8 3/4 annas per half ounce plus postage. This 3.5 ounce letter frank with 25 rupees, 6 annas, or 6 1/4 annas, excuse me, is the latest recorded use of the 25 rupee on cover. At the same time the rates were lowered, the 2 ocean rate to England was reduced to 3 rupees, 13 annas per half ounce, plus postage. This 1.5 ounce letter was in the last 2 ocean airmail. It was flown on the Clipper China, which departed Singapore November 30th of 41 and arrived San Francisco on December 6th. In May, the weekly Pan Am service that had started alternating between Hong Kong and Singapore. In October, they began using Singapore exclusively. This cover is endorsed via Hong Kong. If it did travel that route, there was a shuttle to Manila from Hong Kong to catch Pan Am flights from Singapore. This cover would have left New York December 8th on the Atlantic and arrived in Lisbon December 11th. The cover also has a George VI 10 rupees, which in the franking, which again is one of only 5 such covers. The next expected Clipper left San Francisco on December 3rd for Singapore, but it never arrived. This December 6th cover is franked for the 3 rupees, 8 3/4 annas inclusive rate for air to USA and surface to England, which only saved 2 1/4 annas. This is one of only 2 covers I have ever seen requesting this service. They've got no air service, and there is a Chichester forwarding mark 100 days later on March 16, 1942. This cover was also posted on December 6th, and again it has 2 George VI 10 rupee stamp, and this is the latest recorded use of this stamp. The Pearl Harbor attack was on December 7th. I consider this December 8th cover a Pearl Harbor date cover, since at the time of the attack, it was already December 8th in Burma because of the international date line. This December 9th cover was from experimental POR 21, the post office used by the Flying Tigers. It is endorsed via Trans-Pacific Clipper, but the service never resumed. It was back-stamped in San Francisco 68 days later on February 5th. This November 27th cover to Canada wanted service to air service to Hong Kong and surface beyond. It was back-stamped Victoria December 2nd, excuse me. When Japan attacked Hong Kong on December 8th, the cover was still in Hong Kong. It was detained in Hong Kong until eventual liberation. It received this hand stamp, detained in Hong Kong by the Japanese from December 1941 to September 1945. It's one of 6 recorded covers from Burma with this hand stamp. Japan did invade southern Burma on December 11th. Okay, the Japanese advanced steadily. The British Army evacuated Rangoon March 7th of 1942. The Japanese entered the city March 9th. BOAC had already suspended service to Rangoon February 6th. The only Empire air service was the relatively new CNA sea service, last shield to Calcutta, connecting with the BOAC service on the Horseshoe Route. The rate to anywhere in the empire became 1 rupee, 10.5 annas. This March 23rd cover from Mamio flew CNAC to Calcutta and the Horseshoe Route. It was to South Africa. It was later forwarded to Durban, and has later forwarded to Lloyd's Bank in London, and it has an April 28th forwarding mark. This, come on. There we go. Okay. There, now it's banned. March 25th cover from Mandalay would have flown CNAs to Calcutta and then by sea to Australia. Singapore had fallen on February 15th, and the Horseshoe Route no longer flew east of Calcutta. This March 28th internal cover from Mamio to Akyab never had a chance. There were too many Japanese between the 2 points. It wound up in Simla, India on July 20th. Simla is where the Burma government in exile located. It finally arrived in Akyab December 19th, 1945, after Burma was liberated and the civil government was being restored. This is a 4.5 ounce March 28th, 1942 cover to England, and it needed 14 rupees, 10 annas for air to Calcutta and Durban, and then sea to the UK. A 15 rupees George V stamp was used. This convenience overpayment is the latest known use of this stamp, and it's also the only known solo. It was reported to me after my cover census was first published in the Burma Fantail, and now does reside in my collection. Mandalay was severely bombed on April 3rd, and fires burned for days. Here's one of my favorites. Addressed to Bermuda, franked with Burma stamps, but carried outside of the mails as most post offices were not operating. It was given to the branch post office at the Great Eastern Hotel in Calcutta on April 8th, 1942, where it was backstamped. They circled the Burma stamps as unacceptable since they were not Indian stamps. The stamps were canceled on April 14th at the Calcutta GPO. They must have decided the Burma stamps were fine given the situation, and no postage due was indicated. The Japanese continued to advance. This April 17th cover from Mamio has a partial censor mark at the right that is considered by the Civil Censorship Study Group the latest known use of this mark. The censor staff left Lashio April 22nd. The Japanese entered the city April 28th. After May of 42, the Japanese controlled nearly all of Burma. The small Chin Hills area near the Indian border remained under British control. The postal service was established from Phalam in the Chin Hills and Aijal in the Lushai Hills district of India. The 170-mile distance was covered by barefooted runners in relays. Male runners had to sleep in 14 camps established along the extremely mountainous route. This Phalam September 8th, 42 cover was backstamped in Aijal 8 days later on September 16th. It was amongst the last batch of mail to use regular Burma service stamps. They would need more official stamps soon. The famous Chin Hill provisionals were improvised official stamps. They felt it was important because official mail was supposed to use official stamps. Regular Burma stamps were given an OHMS overprint applied by typewriter or hand stamp. The stamps on this cover receive both, and they're separated here for illustration. It's one of 3 known 1 anna covers with this double overprint. The last recorded Chin Hills provisional cover is this December 4th, 1942 cover that went to Tidham, also in the Chin Hills. After that, there were no more Burma stamps available. Aijal did send Burma stamps, or did send them some regular India stamps to use. But since there were no more Burma stamps available, this seems a logical time to end this presentation of the Burma first 2 issues. So I'm done.
That was fantastic, Mike.
Thank you.
I'm going to I took your screen share down, and I'm going to take your spotlight so we can see everyone. And Rob will start with the Q&A, and I'll start bringing you over. If you'd like to have priority when I bring you over, just raise your hand and I'll get to you first. And please remember to turn on your cameras and your mic.
Okay.
Take it away, Rob.
All right. Thanks again, Mike. That was a wonderful presentation. One of the questions from an anonymous viewer is, can you put the Anna and the rupee into perspective?
By compared with the dollar, or what?
Well, what was it worth back in say 1937?
Well, okay. Yeah, I do have that. In 1937, the dollar was worth 2.68 rupees. By 1939, the dollar was worth 3 rupees. Of course, you can then, there were 16 annas in the rupee and 12 pies in the anna. That answers the question.
Okay. Another question we have is, do the different color censor marks have different meanings?
No, not that I'm aware of. They just seem to use all 3 of them. Black is the more common, but the others don't seem to carry any premium, you know, when covers are priced.
All right. All right. Those were all the questions that we had that were posted so far. We can start opening it up to the audience. Joan, do we have anybody online ready?
Well, I think they have to just unmic. I think Bob Vogel, do you have any?
No, it was a great presentation. I enjoyed it very much. Way out of my league. I'm waiting for part 2.
All right, let's talk forgeries, because that's a topic that's always near and dear to my heart. Do you get a lot of forgeries for Burma?
Sometimes on the inverted overprint, the Burma overprint stamp with inverted overprint is worth more than the Indian stamp with the overprinted stamp. So sometimes they can add a Burma to it, hoping that the Royal seems to catch those and they don't get past them. Yeah, when you get into the Japanese occupation, and these stamps had the peacock overprints in the Japanese occupation, which, by the way, was not done by the Japanese, if you're not aware. There was something called the British Independence Army that decided to help the Japanese because the Japanese were promising them independence, and they thought, well, good, we'll be rid of the British. And they overprinted those stamps, and when the Japanese arrived, they tolerated those peacock overprints. Later in the war, that British Independence Army came to the conclusion, well, the British were better than these Japanese. So they offered to start helping the British reconquer the country. So, but anyway, you were asking about forgeries, and I got way off, didn't I?
That's okay. Tony, you have a question? Let's unmute you.
Right. Tell me about the inverted watermarks. I mean, there didn't seem to be that much difference in the illustrations that you had of them both. Are they that easy to pick, or are they that hard, or?
To find?
The inverted watermarks. At
No,
the
what you-
start, at the very start, you showed the differences and some of the inverted watermarks, and there was an illustration of the ordinary watermark and the inverted.
Yeah,
didn't
the star's upside down. Mhm.
Right. I just wasn't recognizing an upside down star compared to the others. That was all.
Oh, yeah, it's a 5-pointed star, and the normal has the point going up, the single point going up, and the inverted has the star going down.
Okay.
I was looking for the wrong thing.
Okay. Could you say it easier on the elephant's head? In the George the
Oh,
Sixth?
yes. The elephant's head was much easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. No, thank you.
I don't know how to get into this.
I see Mike White's on there.
I'd just like to thank you, Mike, for a great
I
presentation.
am Mike.
And I'd like to say that I collect a few of the Japanese occupation of Burma issues. So I got a link now in the comments section to your email address, and at some stage when I have some spare time, I'd like to email you and check in with the study group.
Oh, okay.
It was on the AAPE, Mike. I didn't give out any confidential information.
Okay. That's fine.
So
Oh,
delete.
by the way, I would add one thing. The introduction said I was the director of the Burma study group. I'm a director. And there's the president and secretary and editor. They do all the work. They just ask directors questions once in a while.
Delete.
Yeah, I have two questions. Thank you very much, Mike. That was an absolutely fascinating presentation. I've been collecting Burma stamps for a long time, along with India and Ceylon and so on. I do not have any of the covers anywhere like what you have. But I do have two questions. The first one relates to the errors that some of them you mentioned in those early stamps. Stanley Gibbons does report some of them, but there are others that I think they don't report. I have one or two stamps that are not listed in Gibbons. How do I figure out why they're not listed? What does Gibbons do in order to determine whether an error stamp should be listed in the catalog? And the second question is, I have a lot of Japanese occupation stamps with all the overprints. How do I tell which are forgeries and which are genuine? Is there any good way to do that? Thank you.
Well, it's pretty easy. I mean, are pretty difficult to tell. Oh, let's see. Your first question was, what does it take for Gibbons to list a variety? Well, I think one thing they want to believe that it's really a constant variety and it's always in the same position, And if you can't demonstrate that, I don't think they're going to list a variety. Oh, Japanese occupation. And how to tell the forgeries. Well, it does take a lot of knowledge, more knowledge than I have. And I do think that the Royal does a pretty good job, as does the BPA in their opinions. Some of them are a little bit easier than others. I think it's that one at Payapon, which is actually 4 different overprints. So if you get a pair and they have the same overprint, well, it's an obvious fake because that couldn't be. They have to. If you get a block of 4 that's all the same overprint, no, they're 4 distinct overprints. There's slight differences that can be told. That being said, I used to have some of the collect some of those and collect the regular stamps. And then the Gerald Davis auction was coming up. And I said, well, I can't be a player that auction unless I raised some cash, and I managed to sell my Japanese occupation for enough money to be a player in the, because I just, it was easy for me to say which one interested me the most. So.
Thank you. Florence, you have a question. Nice to see you tonight.
Thank you. I'm in Rochester, New York, US. I was, I'll have to admit, although I'm very interested in the stamps, I was looking at the address and the addressees
Oh, okay.
because I was born in Burma
Oh,
of missionary parents, and I arrived few years before those stamps did. So I am now also a modified stamp collector, but my father collected Burma stamps, and so did my husband, neither of whom are around anymore. And I just had a great interest in this program because of that. And I had to look at the envelopes who was going to and from. And my father worked for the American Baptist Mission Press.
right.
And that was one of the spots at the addresses that I saw. And another one was a connection with the English Methodist Mission in China. We had, cross conversations with other mission groups too. So in addition to your lecture and stamps, I found some other stuff that I like to see too. So
What was your father's name?
Hollingworth.
Oh, I've got covers either written to him or from him.
I'll bet you do. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And Sidney Hollingworth.
Yeah.
He went over as a printer in the Baptist Mission, and later on became an evangelist and worked. Well, where was I born? Oh, I was born in Maine, but we lived in up country along the coast. I can't remember. And he did a lot of deputation work through that area.
When he went back, did he go to like Maine or something like that?
Did he what?
Go to Maine when he came
No,
back?
no, Ohio.
Yeah, there were a lot of them from Ohio.
Right.
I was
We had
thinking,
in Granville, Ohio, was kind of a Baptist missionaries resort.
yeah.
A lot of the people on furlough stayed there, and we ended up living there.
Uh-huh.
So, but I'm interested to know. I'll have to get in touch with you to see what kind of mail you've got from him.
Sure. Be happy to look for you.
Oh, how interesting to go to a stamp show and see like your father and people you know up in the frames.
How about that?
Mhm.
Pretty neat.
Richard Moss, welcome. You have a question.
Yes, I have, Joan. Good evening, Mike.
Hi.
These Chin Hill overprints, the OHMS overprints for Chin Hills.
Mhm.
I've got two sets of catalogues at home. I've got the one which eventually became the Murray Payne catalogue. And in the 1980 edition of that, printed by another company, the Chin Hill overprints are listed. But I'm struggling to find them in Gibbons' catalogue. Can you tell me where they're listed? And again, my catalogue for my latest catalogue, I regret to say, if anybody from Stanley Gibbons is here, is 2014, but I can't find it.
Isn't there a mention in Gibbons that just says some were overprinted? But I think beyond that, it doesn't say much. Well, the best listing by far a few years ago, there was a good listing in the Burma Peacock, I believe it still was. It's the Burma Fantail now. And then a very large bunch of covers were came to surface, I guess, that had been collected by a guy a Burmese person in the Chin Hills, and they were all domestic, internal covers. They didn't leave the country. They were just all between the 4 post offices in the town, and it greatly increased the number of Chin Hills covers that exist. Although James Song wound up with an awful lot of them, and there's some overprints that are only seen in this new batch. There's a few denominations that are only seen in that new batch. They're still very desirable for many reasons, but they're maybe not as rare as once thought, although they still get pretty good prices when they're auctioned off. But yeah, your Gibbons catalog doesn't have much of a listing of them.
No. Well, the old Bridger and Kay catalogue, which became Murray Payne's catalogue,
Yeah,
that gives quite a comprehensive listing, but no prices. But of course, that's 40 years ago now that was published.
yeah, and we let I think Dick and Pollard know about, after we had our census, we sent him a copy of it, of of the over 100 covers. Yeah.
Mm.
And he was amazed.
Hey, Mike, before I get to you, John, could you just give us a little bit of a shout out about the Maplewood Stamp Club?
Sure. Our Maplewood Stamp Club is located just north of St. Paul, Minnesota, and in the White Bear Lake, Maplewood. But we have members from all over the Twin Cities area. And I myself, I'm located about 200 miles from there. I'm the furthest away member, but I'm in charge of membership. It's just kind of nothing. At any rate, I want to invite everybody to our MetroPEX Stamp Show, which is October 21 and 22 at the Roseville Skate Rink. There's a nice room in there that we utilize. And we should have, I think, 8 to 10 dealers. It's one of those typical shows where we've got free stamps for kids, and we've got, a number of other new sorts of things going on. We'll have some displays from the Minnesota State Fair. It should be a fun time. So if you're in the area, come on down.
Thank you very much. Are there exhibits?
Yeah, no, well, not the traditional sort of exhibits. There are some exhibits that some of the members did for the Minnesota State Fair, and they would be tossed out by a legitimate sort of exhibit judge, but they're kind of fun sorts of things that people did.
Well, don't underestimate them. I think it should be a really fun time, and it's great. Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thanks, John. Okay, Mike.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me a moment.
Yeah, no problem. And Mike, you sell these things, right? So you must know these.
What?
You sell Burma, don't you?
No, I'm no dealer.
Oh, no, Mike White.
Oh, Mike White, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Lay. Nice to see you.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful exhibit. But I have a little question. You mentioned the INA that turned around and started fighting for the British.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of those individuals that were traitors to the Japanese and turned around to help ourselves or the Allies?
Oh, I don't have any. You talking about names, or?
I'm talking about covers.
No, I have no covers to verify that. Just everything I've ever read said that, including the guy that became their first president and then got assassinated, and it's his daughter, the one that you hear about all the time in Burma now, that's trying to fight the military government. But he was one of them, and they kind of were making understanding, if we do help you, you're going to at least consider some change in our status, aren't you? And yeah, by 1947, an interim government was established. They had an interim government, and by 1948, what was it, January 4th, 48, they were independent. They weren't part of the Commonwealth or anything then.
Yeah,
But no.
that's great. Pity you don't have any covers.
No, I can't. I don't have any covers to document that, I guess.
Yeah. Is it possible that you could send me the documentation that you do have?
Oh, about just that there's,
INA in Burma.
oh, yeah, I could try and find where I read that. I've read it more than one place. But it'd just be out of a book. But
That's
I'll see
okay.
I'll see what I can find.
Any information is useful
Mhm.
for, yeah. Okay, may I then move on to Ian Bridle? Ian, if you're listening, you should have a look at my website. Easy to find, mikewhiteuk.com.
Okay. Right. First name, last name.com.
And send me your email contact, please.
Yep.
Okay.
I can do that. No worries. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
MikeWhite.com. I
And
can
back
do
to
that.
Mike Lay. What a fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed it. I started to get a little bit excited when the covers appeared, and I got very excited when the World War II material was shown.
Mhm.
Wonderful stuff. How am I going to find you something more?
Yeah.
John, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, good. Yes, it is evening over there.
Yep.
I've got a question for Mike White. Mike, would you mind repeating the address of your website, please?
Yeah, it's Mike White, UK.
Yeah.
.com. That will find me. You might want to put www in front.
Well, if you ever need it, please feel free to contact the British Empire Study Group and we'll put you in touch with Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Mike.
And
I just pulled up
thank
the
you, Joe.
website. It all works.
Yeah, usually if you want to contact someone else, we filter it. We don't just give you someone's address, but Mike is well known to give his address, so it's happy to provide it.
Thank you.
I'd just like to make say something about Mike Lay's presentation. I was driving back from the railway station in the dark, and I had it on my phone. And I daren't look at the phone, but it was an absolutely fascinating presentation. I guess will this be recorded and will it be available online?
Yes, it will. It will be on YouTube. Now, it takes me a while because I have to work, unfortunately. So we will. It gets on usually in about a week. So like at the Collectors Club, we pay a videographer, so it's done the next day. But here, we don't charge a membership, as you know, and everything's really just free to promote knowledge. So we don't have the budget for a paid videographer. So you have to wait for me.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Or Rob, one of us. So. Okay, yeah, well, I'll tell you what I found fascinating, Mike, is just that whole challenge of when it started a country and then to have the leader die.
Mhm.
Now, what does a country do? It's like you thought you had the stamps and then the monarch died. And, I guess that's a real bummer.
And then the next monarch resigned.
Wow. I'd hate to hear some of the conversations that and they're deciding to print stamps. You know. So, oh, Ian, nice to see you.
Yeah, hi.
I found it very valuable that you mentioned that the Burma overprints were lithographed, not letterpressed on the stamps. That's very useful for forgery detection.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Oh, and someone mentioned that the reveal program has changed. So there is another replacement for that.
Is there? Boy, that was
Yeah.
so useful.
The name escapes me, but once I have it bookmarked. So when I find it, we'll re-up it.
Yeah, if you can find it, let me know, Joan, because Michael Hood from our club in Toronto has done extensive research on that.
Yeah, it was one of the folks at one of our last meetings. He did a little quick tutorial on it, and I was like I was fascinated. I was like,
Joan, I think it was Garfield Porch that shared that with us.
oh, right. I think it was someone on his show. Garfield didn't share it, but the fellow.
Yeah, right.
Michelle Hood was
Yeah.
was the guy. Yeah, for sure.
You're right, Bob. You're right.
So yeah, that was really useful.
Is it just as good as Retro Reveal was, or better even?
Hopefully it's going to be better because it's operated by a philatelist, not a techie person.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully it'll be better. I'm not very conversant with it, but I had used Retro Reveal at times, and I will get into that one of these days. A marvelous tool.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many cancels I've figured out using it. It's great.
I always have a problem when you have part of the letters and you're sitting there trying to play Scrabble and guess the middle ones.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Joan, it's Ann here. I caught that same West Toronto Stamp Club presentation when Michelle talked about that program. And Sid, the president of West Toronto, put the link to it in the newsletter, in the September newsletter. I will dig it out and send it to you over the weekend.
Oh, thank you very much. And
the link to that website where you use this new program. I know Sid put it in the September newsletter. I don't have it handy on the iPad. It's filed on my laptop, and I'm watching on the iPad right now, but I'm working tomorrow, but I can, over the weekend, I'll send it. I'll try and find an email for you and send you the link so you can pass it on to Mike.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you very much. So, yeah, we make all of our videos available. The one exception will be the Gary Powers one. I'm not sure he'll let it out to club members, but I think he's a little copyright concerned about putting it on YouTube. So we'll see how that goes, but it will be, that's the only one that may be restricted. One of the things we like to do here is make sure that the information is available to everyone for years and years to come, which is fantastic. It is fantastic. So if I would encourage you, if you have a presentation or if you have a subject matter that you'd like to hear, please let Rob or I know, because if you're interested in it, I'm sure other people are also. That's my stick. Any other comments for Mike? Douglas, nice to see you. Amy?
Joan, I've just checked the replacement for Retro Reveal is called Postmark-Reveal.
Yes.
So that's there for you to use. My experience is it's not quite as good, not quite as many options, but it's still in development. So hopefully it will get better as it gets more established.
Now, what does it do? Put filters? You know, when I looked at, does it just put filters on everything?
It essentially does what Retro Reveal did.
Okay.
So it will split up the color bands that it identifies in the scan that you upload. But I agree, it has been very useful. It's a shame that the original is not there anymore.
Yeah, it was priced good and it was so quick. You're never waiting in line, it seemed. You just got on and did it.
That's terrific.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else? Welcome. You know, I'm glad
I
to
have
see
a
you
quick,
guys.
quick question. John, you mentioned earlier about a survey. Where do I find the link to that?
Well, as soon as you log off, it's going to probably be in your face.
Thank you.
If not, it will come on the follow-up email that tells you the rest, you know, our program. And we're putting together our program for next year. I think we have a couple of them booked already, right, Rob?
We do.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's pretty good.
Oh,
That's it. Everyone's hungry?
well.
Mhm.
It's bedtime, really. And I'm hungry.
Oh,
Or past bedtime in some cases, yeah.
yeah.
It's tomorrow, yes.
It's tomorrow for you, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Well, it shows that the old saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire Study Group. Tonight, we've got coverage from the United Kingdom, London, New Zealand, France, Nova Scotia, Hobart, Australia, California, and New York, and then a lot in between.
Mhm.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, I think I'm gonna go. I think my supper is ready.
Right.
Well, thank you again, Mike. That great. I mean, very informative because I knew very little about Burma, and this was really, really helpful for me.
Excellent.
So,
Thank you.
okay.
Good
Well,
night.
thank you very much.
I got one question. How many of you realize that the Burma's population ranked that as high as it did among the Commonwealth or the British territories?
No, didn't know that.
No.
No.
Yeah. And in the cities, they were using English, you know, in the English in the rural areas, you know, they were probably still using their native languages. But,
Wow.
Now, all your letters are in English, though, aren't they?
yeah, nearly all. Yeah. Yeah. Get a little later, I start getting a little bit more in that Burma script, you know. But there's a fairly young philatelist from Burma who's living, he's a student in Singapore that I've ran across, and he's interested in all eras of Burma, not just the, you know, the modern independent. And he's been very gracious if I send him scans of covers to translate it for me. So
That's a useful person.
yes. And he's a young philatelist. We know how few of those are.
Oh, that's great.
Mhm.
We'll have to keep our eye out if there's something that we could repay him with, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, Mike, you're in the right place to have your supper. So I'll bid you
Okay.
good night.
Okay.
Cheers.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 6 o'clock in my time zone, so.
Oh, 12:30
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Oh, Douglas. So thank you for joining us, Douglas.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Well.
always a wonderful experience. Whoever's on, well, I mean, tonight was special, but whoever's on is always a good experience.
Yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you
I'm
so
glad.
much.
Oh, thank you.
Well,
Cheers.
it's always fun to talk about your stuff to new people. So, okay, good night.
Good night.
Good night, Mike. Thank you.
Bye-bye.